So barbecue, a lot of people have rules. I think people kind of overthink like degrees of doors or, even a specific way you build your fire. And I just tell them, if there's rules in barbecue, I break them.
I'm on a journey to become the best cook I can be. And somehow on this journey, I've convinced the best of the best. From backyard barbecue warriors turned successful restaurateurs, all the way to classically trained chefs turned pitmasters who are at the absolute top of their game. Last month, we learned from John Bates at Interstellar Barbecue, who took all of the structure and skill that he learned as a classically trained chef and became one of the top pitmasters, one of the first in the class to win Michelin stars, something that's never been done in Texas barbecue before. Today, you and I have a unique opportunity. We're gonna learn from somebody who also got one of those Michelin stars, but who did it very differently by breaking all of those rules. Today, you and I get to learn from Allie Clem at La Barbecue.
I grew up mainly in Fort Worth for the majority of my life, since second grade to all through high school. Barbecue just was like not really a thing in our family. I mean, we'd go eat at, Fort Worth staples, like Angelo's was like, a big one for us, or Cousins. I mean, we even threw some of our soccer parties, our award ceremonies at Cousins Barbecue. And, but it was not something that I ever really thought about, like, oh man, I gotta cook this. My mom is a fantastic cook. She would cook, 5 meals a week for us pretty much. And she really kind of strived to make, the healthiest dinner she possibly could for us. Nutrition was a big deal in our family. So I really grew up loving food, home cooked meals. That's why I went to college for nutrition. Well, I wanted to do sports medicine, but the college I went to, the base class for that, I was gonna have to go to Texas Tech, and I'll tell you where I'm not going. Texas Tech. So I kind of, the first semester, I kind of was feeling out, like different areas of that college, within the college, and really, through all of my sports and my mom educating us with nutrition, I really thought, man, this is something I can really get into. And I really enjoyed it, the dietitian classes, and of course there was a science of food, which, was like a small cooking class, if you will. And I really enjoyed it. I really wanted to get into like the nutrition in schools, in like elementary and middle school to do, and then restaurant just sucks you in. And
So was there a turning point? Was there a point where you said, okay, cooking is gonna be my career more than nutrition science?
I took a management job with a restaurant that I had been working with, and I really just kind of like got sucked into the whole opposite end of waiting tables and bartending. And then I'd also worked in kitchens, like small aspects, but then in the management part, I really kind of did a little bit more in the kitchen. And I was like, man, I really like saute, really, like it's like a lot of pressure. I was like, I love this. It just like fires that dopamine in you, that rush. And I was like, man, I could really get into this.
When I tasted the whole tray of food yesterday with Allie, the thing that stood out the most was the brisket. See, the lean, the flat of the brisket, if I didn't know better, I would have sworn that it was brisket point. It was so tender and so moist and so juicy. Can't wait to see what she does to create that. All right, trimming briskets. What do we got?
Got an all-natural, grass-fed, grain-finished choice brisket from Hartley Ranch.
Okay, choice?
Yeah, I like the middle of the road. Prime is just way too fatty for how we cook. This choice brisket, it renders properly, and we still get that really nice moist fat across the, across the back end of this, what they call the point.
All right, let's see what we got. Get ready for my least favorite part of barbecue, trimming brisket.
That's not that bad. All right, so we're gonna start here, of course, take this, what they call the mohawk off.
Right.
And we'll just kind of, let's see, all of this here is pretty much trash. You got that kind of weird fat here.
Right.
Then we'll create this little wall here. And you just want to kind of make it nice and flat. All right, so we've got this piece of beef here. It's actually looks pretty good. We're gonna save all of this for our sausage.
Okay.
So you can see that there's like some really nice fat on top of here, also the lean. Then you're gonna take all of this off here.
All right, so that hard deckle fat comes off.
It comes off. And we're just gonna kind of move it around and get all this stuff off.
And that's all just trash.
Right, this is just that connective tissue that, but we don't have to clean it up like completely because it will break down.
It'll break down.
Yeah. So we're just kind of just cleaning it up a little bit. But this is a beautiful brisket. So this one, you can kind of start up at the top and just follow it on down this like ridge.
Right.
And get all of this fat off of here. You can see it kind of loosens up as I trim it. And then you know that the fat is like breaking. See, you can see this and you can feel it. So you'll kind of like gauge. So when you get this kind of like really kind of crazy fat lip, you can turn it over and kind of find that and just kind of roll your knife underneath it as you roll the brisket, and it'll kind of take all this around. But that's pretty much what you're looking for right there. So I worked in well, it's not there anymore, unfortunately. I worked in a bar, it was a gay bar. It's called Rusty's. And, dealing with people downtown drinking is a feat in its own. Then Leanne comes in, and she was actually sober at the time, which was really refreshing. She said she was a photographer, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, it was just really nice to have like a conversation with somebody that wasn't, being aggressive and weird. And then she came in that Sunday, and I used to do their beer busts. So I would do steaks, like, people would bring me a steak and I'd season it and cook it on this like bullshit like charcoal grill in the back, and then I'd do burgers and like all kinds of different stuff.
At the bar?
At the bar. And she came in with her, like one of her childhood friends, and he was like, don't you know who she is? I was like, I don't know. No, I don't know who she is. And he was like, you're gonna cook her, you're gonna cook her steak, and do you know who her dad is? And I was like, no, I don't. I was like, I just moved here. And that's just kind of like how I found out that, she came from this crazy barbecue family that was wildly famous in not only Austin, but in Texas in general.
So as you got to know her, beyond the famous barbecue family, and she's trying to impress you, once the guard's down?
She was extremely creative, and it just read all over her, honestly, from her outfits to her personality to the way she thought. Like, she was creative in every aspect. So I just I think that honestly read through in her cooking too. I know she was cooking before she met me, obviously, and she always enjoyed it. But I think that once we got together, it got a little bit more creative and elevated.
So was food a big part of your relationship?
It was a huge part. I mean, on my time off and her time off, we would explore different restaurants. We traveled the world for food. I mean, that was the only reason, really, well, not the only reason, but it was a major part of why we traveled, is just for food, for cooking processes, recipes, seasonings, just culture in general through food. And that just was really the basis of a lot of the things that we did.
The Sausage at La Barbecue is kind of a throwback to the OG places like Louis Mueller's and others that have been making sausage for years and years since they were butcher shops. But they've got a really unique twist on flavors here.
We do an all beef sausage made from our brisket trimmings that you saw earlier today. We literally grind them. We have a special grind that we do for each of the batches. All the same grind. We literally do an all beef. We've gone through like several different kind of adventures with our sausage, but I think the all beef really sings.
Okay.
So we do our grind for our sausage on the brisket, and then we make these spice packs.
Okay.
So we do 3 different sausages, right?
All right.
So we do our traditional, and then we have our chipotle, and then we have our jalapeno. So in the spice pack, of course we do, salt and pepper is key, of course.
Sure.
Granulated garlic, of course. We also do a little bit of paprika, and we actually put turmeric in it as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. Our chipotle, we do back off a couple of ingredients that we put in our traditional, because we do put adobo sauce and chipotle peppers in there that kind of mimics, a lot of the seasoning that we had taken out of the other. We move along to our jalapeno.
Right.
Well, we've got to take some spicy out of what we did on the traditional, right? Because we're adding and we actually do pickle our jalapenos in-house, and then we use it to stuff our sausage, our jalapeno
Really?
sausage, yeah. So after that, we're gonna mix it up. And it's so funny because every time I watch him mix the sausage, I'm always like, he's kneading it like a cat. So he like really gets in there and mixes it all around, makes sure that it's nice and even and all of the meat is coated, and the grind is broken down just a little bit, and it's just like one big mass, if you will. We do that with all three. And we do make sure that the jalapeno is kind of mixed all the way through, so you don't get like one crazy one, So that's like a big key to that. Also with the chipotle, you definitely want to make sure that adobo kind of goes all the way through the sausage.
Anybody who knows barbecue will tell you that fall off the bone ribs means overcooked ribs, because you cook them so long that they fall off and they don't have structure. And that's not good. Except when I tasted these yesterday, they actually had structure, but still came right off the bone. And this has to be something about the way they cook them. All right, pork ribs.
Pork ribs, easiest thing to trim.
Yes, even I can do this.
Did you see you've got this like breastbone right here?
Right?
Okay, we're gonna take that off. Just get right through those bones.
Do you use that for stock, or is that just trash?
No, we can use it for stock.
Okay, great.
And see, it's got that really nice piece right on top.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's good meat right there.
Right, absolutely.
So we got a little skirt back here.
Right.
I'm just kind of take that skirt right off. This is also fairly good meat. If it has a crazy amount of fat back here, we kind of trim it up, but other than that, not really.
Right.
It's really not that big of a deal.
Right.
We'll flip it over. We've got this little skirt situation down here, and we follow it right across the bottom. And these are those rib tips I was telling you about.
Right.
So this is actually really good to cook with, as you can see.
So are we getting down to like a St. Louis cut here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then we'll just take off this like little end piece right here, and boom. It's your rack of ribs.
Boom. All right.
Leanne and I had been dating maybe a month, and she was like, I want you to meet my brother. And I was like, okay. Well, I didn't know anything about him, of course, yeah, okay, he cooked barbecue, Well, at that time, John was opening up his J. Mueller barbecue trailer. We went the day that they pulled the service trailer and the smoker on the lot on South First, and it was so bright and shiny, and I was like, oh, wow, just moving into Austin, like I'd never really even been in a food truck, and plus it was kind of like the beginning of food truck craze in Austin. Flash forward to the night before he was supposed to open, I get a phone call, and it was fairly late, and he was like, hey, Allie, I don't have any onions, I need onions, we open at 10 a.m. And I was like, okay, well, it's gonna be probably about 3 o'clock, when I get there. So I go to the store and I bring him onions, and he has one employee, Kevin Kelly, and it was John just pacing around like he did. John paced, that's what he did, he'd pace. Even if he wasn't doing something, it looked like he was busy. I was like, John, we're like, what in the fuck are you gonna do? I was like, what are you doing? Like, so you have one employee, you have all these people talking about your opening, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna take a nap, and I'll come back up here and help you prep and whatever else you need, and help you open the trailer. And that really was the rest of it.
So what was the food like back then?
Oh God. I had never really had brisket as good as I had ever had it until I had John Mueller's brisket. It was peppery, it was like crispy, but also tender. He cooked it wildly fast and hot. It was just incredible. It was like nothing like it. And when he was on, and you couldn't beat it. So little by little, I gained his trust, and he would show me different things, and I would just watch. But mainly it was just like, I would observe him and just kind of mimic what he would do to create what he was doing. So John's investors, his original investors in J. Mueller Barbecue, they hired me as management right off the bat. Well, that pissed John off immediately.
You're now being brought in by investors to be a manager of your girlfriend's brother's business.
Well, when you say it like that, I mean, that sounds fairly crazy.
Okay, is this a super secret seasoning spice blend here?
Salt, pepper, garlic.
Salt, pepper, garlic.
That's right.
So what's our process?
So we've got them feeling really nice and sticky.
Right? So we let them come up to temperature a little bit.
Yeah,
To
I mean, they're still really cold.
sweat a little bit, right?
But we want that fat to get sticky so the all of this adheres to the brisket, obviously.
Okay.
All right. So literally, I mean, we just kind of start and nice, easy breezy.
So with that sweat, we don't need to use binders then, huh?
Right. And get all of the good stuff.
Okay.
And we
Getting
season.
the sides.
Yeah,
Good.
we season the hell out of this thing.
Okay.
We're like literally gonna just season like crazy here. We're getting all the edges, and we are a heavy seasoned family around here, as you can see.
I can.
That's pretty much all she wrote. We'll rack them. So we are going to season them, but first we do a light mustard slather on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so this really helps it, adhere all of that really nice seasoning to the pork ribs, gives it a really nice crust, but we need to make sure that it's really nice and thin. And then we're gonna season the ribs pretty much as we do the brisket. We're gonna lay it on thick. Francisco's come up with a kind of a variation of our brisket rub. There's a little bit of difference because of course in pork, you do need a whole lot of salt for pork,
right.
But there's not like a crazy amount of meat on ribs, so we can't over salt it. So we've kind of taken some back with others.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So good heavy coat.
Yeah.
Right.
We're gonna coat these guys.
Okay, now do they need to rest or do they go, we're gonna head straight to the smoker now?
No. They go directly on the smoker. So we have a really nice manual sausage stuffer. He prefers the manual, which I do too. I think that there's more control in it. We've tried the foot pedal situation. It's just too much. As you can see, as he's like pumping it through, he's like keeping a nice steady fill for that sausage. And sometimes it gets like a little bit of air bubbles through it. So he'll literally take the back of the knife and just kind of tap it, and it'll break that air bubble through. It's not ripping the casing, it's just allowing for those air bubbles to kind of release. We do a one link skip. And so instead of doing forward, backward, we'll literally start, and it's like kind of a visual situation, honestly. And he's been stuffing sausage for so long that, I mean, they're usually pretty uniform. So he will link one and then skip one, and then roll it out again, skip one.
Got it.
They were looking to sell the business. John was like, Leanne, please buy it. Please buy it. I swear I'll be good. We can do this together. That was like also, we can do this together, like talking her into it and everything. And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, this is the worst decision that you could ever make in your entire life. And John was like, hey, Leanne and I are gonna go to lunch, which they did, like during the week. Every once in a while I was like, okay, cool. And like, I'll do everything. Don't worry about it. And so they came back, and Leanne's like, we just got back from the bank. I bought the business. And I was like, oh my God, okay. Well, after that, my eyes were open. If this is gonna be something that has changed hands and it's, Leanne's, it's gonna be successful, and it's not gonna be whatever John had been doing. And which caused a huge rift, of course, because now I'm controlling his business. It got a little dark there for a little bit, but we were never on bad terms, really. To eventually John had to walk away, to eventually start, his own place and recreate himself. And we really just took the foundation of what we had and flipped it on its end and came up with a new business concept pretty much with the name, recipes, cooking processes, and sausage. And we did that in 3 days and reopened.
Wow. So reopened as La Barbecue in 3 days.
Right.
When it changed over in course of 3 days to change it to La Barbecue with a new name, a new program and everything, I was convinced to come on and execute that program. A lot of work. There's only 4 of us. There's me, there's Allie, there's Leanne Mueller, and Allie's friend Javier. That's it. There's 4 people. 3 days later, we're ready to present what we did. And there's 300 people in line, like 15 minutes before we're even opening the door of the window thing. So like heavy expectations. Just, doing it 5 days in a row, it's insane. With 4 people, like, when do you sleep? There was a camper on the dirt lot there. We took shifts sleeping in that camper. Like, we were just there all the time for like the first 6 months.
We really didn't know if it was going to take or not, but we named it La Barbecue, feminized barbecue. There for a while, she's always said, Leanne and Allie, but then also, Leanne, LA, and then also so it could be like a take on a few different things. But she really wanted to get away from the Mueller name. And she always said, I didn't want to put my last name on it because people know that last name, and I wanted to show my brothers that I could do this without putting my last name on it. I'm like, okay, well, we'll go with that, and I think we had like a little bit of identity crisis at first because, coming out with something like that is, people are like, so what is this, LA barbecue? What do you come from California? It's like this whole, but we just we stuck by it and just kind of built as we went and educated ourselves as we went, grew the business as we could. We only had 1 smoker back then, which is crazy. We have 5 now. But we would save money and add a smoker, save money, add a smoker, and just kind of built as we had the money for it. So, of course, everybody builds their fires differently. I built a bed of butcher paper, and then I put some smaller logs on the bottom, and in the middle I will layer with paper so it catches through as we go. So we'll just kind of build something a lot like this, like a Lincoln log house, if you will. So we usually use the cardboard to fan it and get that fire going. And it takes about probably 30 minutes for the wood to break down, create coals, and so we can really get that temp at 325, 350 going to start the cook.
Wow, that's so hot.
So since the fire, of course, is at the front of the smoker, we put the biggest briskets up at the front to start, of course, just to get them cooking faster than the small ones. And because we do not rotate our briskets. And this thing works like a convection oven, so we're very lucky to be able to touch them less, open the doors less, which allows us to cook because we're not opening the doors and letting all the heat out. The fatty end of the brisket goes towards the fire before the wrap, and we cook them for about 3.5 hours. Fatty end towards the fire. So what we're looking for is like the fat render, of course, and then we're also setting the bark before we wrap. But we get it up pretty hot, pretty quick. Okay, so as you can see, the fire has started. It's up and going. So we've got these pit doors open, and we're gonna load our pork ribs.
Okay. Now, are we doing these at 300 plus degrees like we do our briskets?
Yeah. Yes. We cook these guys hot.
Okay.
So Frankie's gonna load these pork ribs 2 across all the way down until we're done, right?
Okay.
Until it's full.
Good.
And then he's going to put the meat side up, bones towards fire, top bones towards fire. Right. And we're gonna shut the doors and let it cook.
At this temperature, what, like 9 minutes, 11 minutes for ribs? How long is this gonna take?
Well, for me, it takes about 45 minutes, an hour. So we start by hanging the sausage. We do one single link on each side, all the way down the stick. We're gonna hang these sausages, one link, one link, one link, one link, space them out really nice to where the smoke and the heat really can get around them.
Makes sense.
So we're gonna place those sticks in the most even part of the smoker, which is sort of towards the middle. So one towards the back, one towards the front, but they're pretty through the middle. Now we're gonna cook them for about an hour and a half. Hour and a half, but we cook these low and slow because we definitely don't want that casing to pop.
Right.
She came up here to get some stuff because we had a James Beard dinner that we were gonna cook for. We started cooking and she was like, you know, I don't feel good. And like, she's like, oh, my shoulder. And it was just like immediately, like, boom. It was just like, it escalated quick. I picked up my phone, called 911, poor dispatcher. I was like, you know, screaming on the phone. I had like, just like literally, I was trying to, you know, like handle her and then also tell them how to get, I couldn't even remember the number on the apartment. I could barely even remember the apartment complex name. And I mean, we'd lived there for 7 years. I can't even wrap my mind around what's even going on. And it was crazy because I had taken my Apple Watch off and I did this regularly because she had high blood pressure to begin with, and so I would, you know, do like the heart monitor and just to kind of check her heart rate and stuff like that. So I did that often, and you know, you could just see it on my watch. You know, her heart rate go down, 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 and then EMS got there and they intubated her in the apartment, and I knew it was really bad after that. I had called my friend Kristen, who lives about 30 minutes from here, and they were actually putting her in the ambulance as I was walking out with the chief, and Kristen walked up and she, you know, didn't know how big of a deal it was. Because again, Leanne was always so dramatic. And she took one good look at her on that stretcher and was like, and went back to her car and told her partner, like, this is bad. Well, I was so focused on, you know, so they wouldn't let me, of course, go in the ambulance. So I was gonna go with Kristen, and we got there, and social worker was pretty much, met me at the door. And I was like, well, I've never dealt with that either, so I didn't even know why. And it was because I had to make some pretty quick decisions. And, but it was way past decisions. It was just kind of like, hey, this is what's happening. Who do we need to call to say goodbye, pretty much? So I called Leanne's nephew, and of course a bunch of our friends had gotten wind, of course, and they were up there, and I think there were, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people with me in the room all night until Johnson got there. There was 15 people in the room, and it was wild. Don't cry, you're gonna make me cry.
Sorry.
It was wild to have, you know, like all that support and all these people that, you know, loved her and loved me, and it was just, I was like, well, I can't just leave her here, you know? That's what I said. I was like, I can't just leave her. I walked out of that fucking hospital without her, and it's just crazy, because now I'm just like, well, it's just me, and I have to go back to the house where, you know, that we had decorated, and like all the little knickknacks that we had collected together, and I laid on the floor with the dogs, and it's just like, well, you know, where do you go from here? Like, this is, like, I'm not used to this. It's like almost 13 years together, and everything that I had in Austin, I had built with her, and, you know, vice versa.
And it was just like that next day was the first day of a very different life.
Yeah. So, thank you.
News spread pretty quick amongst, like, people that are pretty close to her, of course, and her and Allie, and it was very quick and sudden and just like out of nowhere. And then there's this sort of like, in the context of barbecue in Austin, it was like a sort of passing of an era.
So how was life different that next day?
Well, I mean, I needed to come talk to my crew. Of course, I had already called Ben, who is like my right hand, and then Francisco. Of course, and Francisco was actually in town, and he never takes a vacation ever. And he had gone to South Padre with his entire family, and they had one more day, and I was supposed to do the rib cook that day. And I was like, looks like we're not gonna have ribs.
So you didn't close the restaurant?
No, we did not. I think that if I would have closed the restaurant, I don't know if I would have had, I know I would have, and I know it would have reopened, but I think it would have been harder for me and my staff to close down and not be here, not do our normal thing, you know, not carry on what we had built here. And so I came to talk to my staff in the morning, and it was so hard. They were all crying, every single one of them. So, you know, I just said, you know, we'll continue making this place the best that we possibly can. But it's like small, tiny details that, you know, we still have to kind of like keep in the back of our minds, that we have to make this the way that she would want.
She lost her life partner. She picked herself up. She kept going. She didn't let any shit get her down. And there are dark days and there are good days. And anytime you've got to go through something like this, we all have them. You don't, you know, just because the person is gone, the feelings aren't, and the life is not, you know. And so, like, you know, you're fine one day, and then all of a sudden somebody walks by you and it smells like them, and you fall apart for a bit. And that's okay. That's being human. That's giving yourself grace.
So as you can see on this brisket, you've got some really nice rendered fat, and also the bark has started to set. This is what we're looking for before we wrap. We got that nice little tuck. Also, we don't want to wrap it too tight because we want a little bit of that steam and air to get into that butcher paper to soften those briskets, especially on that lean end. That's what we're cooking for now, is to tender that lean end and let it catch up with the fatty end. All right, so we put the briskets back on. Of course, we started them fatty in towards the fire, and so we're gonna rotate them across and put the lean in towards the fire this time. They are protected by that butcher paper, so we don't have to worry about them getting too crispy. Yeah. So we can cook them even hotter than we did unwrapped.
You cook them pretty hot unwrapped.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go even hotter now?
Yeah, why not?
Sure.
All right, so now that we have this really, really nice bark, as you can see, we're gonna wrap them in foil so we can tender them, and then we're gonna place it back on the smoker, meat side up. And this is where you're really looking to tender your pork ribs, right? I usually check them at about 45 minutes, just to see where I am. And you can pick them up and see kind of like the flex, if you will.
Okay, well, I guess you show me that when we come back in 45 minutes.
That's right.
You know, you and I talked about the concept of being blind to race, color, creed, religion, orientation, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But you and I might be blind, but the whole world isn't, right? So great barbecue family history gives you an advantage.
Of course.
Lesbian couple in Texas barbecue might not be an advantage.
definitely put some eyes on you, I'll say that.
Yeah. So what was
it
that?
gets people talking.
Yeah.
Definitely. Honestly, though, for a while, we didn't even really showcase that.
Yeah.
We kind of kept it hush-hush because it's not necessarily, and when you're trying to establish a name, you don't really want to pigeonhole yourself.
I think it's always surprising when people find out that Le Barbecue is owned by 2 women. I think that statement itself always kind of shocks people because they know how good the food is, and I think they were the first to have that in people's minds where it's like, oh, like women can make really good barbecue and they are the owners and they run and they started this place. And with Barb's, like we get some of that, but truly like they were the first to receive all that criticism and all that. The way that people do not want to believe that it's real, I'm sure they got a lot of that.
A lot of the times, people didn't even know that I was cooking, that there is a female pitmaster or whatever, female cook, which was fine because I really wanted people to come in for the food and then we could go from there. And then we can show who we are, so for the longest time, for a few years, I don't even think people really knew or thought about it. Maybe they did, and maybe I'm blind to that, but it's not something that we marketed, if you will.
I think a lot of people maybe thought that not just thought, they actually said it out loud that, maybe Leanne and Allie couldn't do it on their own. There was some definite vibes there, like they needed somebody else to do it for them. I remember going to the back on, yeah, they don't need anybody's help. Holy blank, 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 blank. This is jaw-dropping good brisket. And I remember that it was the brisket I had first. And, brisket is a make it or break it kind of meat to begin with. And if you get it right, you get anything right after that. The creativity behind their collaborations was always impressive. So I like the fact that they were always thinking out of the box. But for me, they took regular, barbecue and they elevated it. They had a family legacy of the Mueller family. And you take that legacy and you wonder if it can be continued on by the next generations. Well, they didn't just take it on to the next generation, they elevated it. Whether it was the ribs, whether it was the sausage, whether it was the hot dogs, they didn't rest on the laurels of their past history. And that's impressive to me. Yeah, they're standing on their own 2 feet and they don't need anybody's help.
So now what we're looking for is a nice, even heat, some smoke. You can definitely tell the color on them.
Yeah.
And you can also see the juices kind of bubbling through them a little bit, but they're not quite done yet.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all of these sausages off of the sticks and stick them directly on the grates.
Okay.
And we'll finish them that way.
Okay, what's the logic behind finishing on the grates instead of hanging?
So it's kind of like giving that snap to that casing.
So we're not changing temperature or anything, we're just changing orientation, and that'll help get us the effect that we want at the end.
I'm a very customer-based employee, right? Because they are what fuels this restaurant. If you don't have happy customers, then why do you have a restaurant? Like, you're cooking for these people. And I also treat my staff like they're my family. There again, if you don't have your staff, you don't have a restaurant. If you don't have somebody you can rely on and trust to put out the product that you want and you need. So she would come in and it was like whatever she said went, even as crazy as it was sometimes. And you know what, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the times it did work. I would never tell her that because I fought her tooth and nail on so many different things. And but I don't have that creative mind like she does. I'm more of like a logistic type of gal.
I think that they are yin and yang. I think they were definitely a yin and yang, a balanced couple. Creative, crazy, fun, work ethics, both of them really high. And I think it was like this amalgamation of 2 souls that just took it by storm. And they weren't ever willing to let anything stand in their way.
Leanne is someone who you will never ever forget. I'm sure scared a lot of people in the best way possible, where yes, like you should believe in like my history and what I have done. And I think that scared a lot of people away. Allie is like super fun and really sweet. I think it's a balance between them where you have Leanne and it's just a very remarkable person, and then Allie sort of kind of balances the atmosphere where it's like, okay, like, yes, like we're serious, but we also have fun. Like Allie, I think like opened up Leanne, if that makes any sense. Like I think she brought out her like sweet and soft side, and I think that was really special.
It's really hard to work so directly with a partner, especially when you're so very different.
You guys spent a lot of time decorating this place. I've seen a lot written about it. I've seen you talking about it, right? Like, what are the impacts on here that you think most represent Leanne?
Well, the art, of course. She was a true artist. You know, photography was her passion. She's an art collector, book collector, and she really wanted this place to reflect kind of what our house looks like, with a lot of art on the walls, you know, bright colors. So I think that was a main focus. She didn't want it to look like the standard barbecue spot, is what she would always say, you know, like with like animals on the wall and neons and, you know, whatever else. She was more of the design aspect, of course. I mean, this place is beautiful, you know, it screams her all the time, you know, with the bright yellow chairs. And then, you know, this is actually one of her photos that she did for Texas Monthly. It was like a drag race that she went and photographed, and her grandfather used to drive El Caminos, and so she pulled this one out and we put it as a tribute to him on this back wall. So obviously we have cooked them for several hours, about what, 6.5?
6.5 hours, and we're talking about briskets being done now.
Oh, they're done, they're tender. So he's literally pulling them and feeling for that lean in. We don't use thermometers at all.
Okay.
Obviously, they are very greasy, so
Right.
that's like a telltale sign.
Right.
And so really he pulls them and feels that lean end right there.
Right.
And if it's tender and the way that we want it to feel, we pull them. He's just literally squeezing them to see if they're tender.
Okay.
In our old cooking process, we would literally, some of them would just like not be there quite yet, and we'd have to close it back up, start the fire back up, and cook them a little bit longer. And with this process, we haven't had to do that at all.
I mean, I guess with those long 12, 14-hour cooks, something going an hour long or shorter, right, isn't a surprise when you're doing these in 6.5 hours.
Right.
Like,
We don't have a
you're
stall.
gonna be pretty close. There can't be a stall, right? You're just powering right through it, right?
Now we're getting into our glaze, right? And there's a couple different steps to this. I'm gonna let you in on one, right?
Okay.
So we're gonna unwrap and we're going to glaze them in the foil, pretty much. So we put like a nice fresh piece of foil down and we glaze the foil. And then we put the meat side down in the foil and we wrap them up. Done.
Okay, so there's no exposed to the air, set the glaze. We're glazing it in the foil.
Maybe.
Maybe. At least not that you're gonna show me. Okay, fair enough. All right.
Maybe, maybe not.
Okay. So how do you, like, she was the creative idea person and you were the stone cold executor, right? So, like, you've built a business based on that yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
How do you replace that in this business to keep it fresh and keep it creative?
You know, I mean, I've cooked for a long time, but my role in this place was not necessarily to create, it was to assist and execute. But that does not mean that I'm not capable of creating whatever else. So it honestly took me a little bit of time to get there. Everything had just been like ripped away from me, of course, you know, and my self-confidence was just not there. So it did take me some time to like kind of switch in my head a little bit like, hey, you're capable of this, you know, and for me to get into it, just even like want to really be creative in food. I mean, just at that specific point in my life, because honestly, I mean, it was just really hard to lose all that and then get creative.
From that day on to where we're at now, you can really see that Ali has just pushed Le Barbecue like a sort of like a new found like passion to keep on making this place like the magical spot that Ali and Leanne like sparked up.
You've got some pretty serious accolades, right? So the first ones to really recognize you is Texas Monthly, right?
Yes, we've been in the top 50 since 2012.
What does it take to be a top 50 restaurant?
You can ask Daniel Vaughn that. You know, I mean, I don't know. It's funny because we always are like, well, this is what they're looking for this year, you know. To be in the top 10, you gotta have it. You gotta have this on your menu, you know, which is not necessarily true. But, you know, it's like a conspiracy theorist type of situation where it's like, you know, there are, I mean, a ridiculous, I'm not even gonna say hundreds because it's like thousands of, you know, barbecue restaurants in Texas, which is crazy. And there's, you know, big ones or small ones, there's, you know, it's wild. So to be 50 out of those thousands is that's a pretty good feat.
So you just got to be part of the first class of Michelin star awardees.
Yes.
Right? So what does the Michelin star mean to you as opposed to the other accolades?
I mean, I don't even know. It's a worldwide recognition. And to be a part of that is incredible. It wasn't anything that I would ever imagine that would be given to me in my life. I mean, and still I have a hard time accepting it. You know, it's like when you feel like, you know, yeah, I work so hard for this and I have an incredible staff, you know, that helps me, and like we really put our best effort into making this product fantastic. But to be recognized for that by a Michelin star is not something that I would have ever even dreamt about.
What's more important than the Michelin star, in my opinion, and I'm not diminishing it because I congratulate her right away, and I'm very excited for them to have that. But her customers are her Michelin stars every single day. Her customers that'll drive, you know, from the airport directly there. A Michelin star is wonderful because it just creates more of a pathway, right? It really does. It creates kind of like a beacon of light saying, hey, come on over here. This stuff is good. But her customers have been telling her this for years already. And your Michelin stars are fantastic. And I mean, there's a lot of accolades and she deserves all of them. And if that puts more light on them, that's great. But she didn't need it. She was already a star on her own.
I think, I mean, just like everything that Ali does, I know that Leanne is like right there with her and like every choice that she makes, and the way that she's running Le Barbecue, it's like you're always going to have that like she's there, she's here.
Leanne's looking down on you now and watching what you've done with your life, with the restaurant, with the traditions that she created, with the priorities that she laid out. What's she thinking?
You know, that's a very, it's a tough question to answer, honestly. I feel like she'd be proud. You know, I feel like she would also be talking shit. Because that's what she did. But I honestly think that she would, I think she'd be really proud of what we've done to get to where we are.